if we look at a ricochet mark like this, knowing what we know now, right? What direction would you think this thing's traveling?
I'm probably going to be, I got a 50-50 chance of being wrong. I'm probably going to be wrong, but I would say it's got a left-hand twist.
Nope.
I knew I would get it wrong. I have 50% chance of getting it wrong. And
That's it. You're on the left. Oops. So, well, think about it, right? So, so it's, which way do you think it's traveling?
It's traveling to the right.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Right, because you have this nice symmetrical.
Right. I learned something in your class, Professor. I couldn't tell the twist, but you know something? I would have probably predicted the twist correctly if I would have thought of it that way.
Yeah, exactly.
It was
exactly.
Yeah.
And so it's important to start with your direction of travel.
Right.
You know? Start with your direction of travel and then work from there.
So far I got a 50 on the.
You got a 50, yeah. I got to give you one, ground ball, so at least you get up to a 75, right?
Right.
So let's see. So ricochets can produce marks on glass, and that can give you a direction of travel as well. So you might see like a spot. So when a bullet strikes glass, you get these circles, right? Well, let's do another thing on bullets through glass. We could do a whole another thing on that. It's amazing what happens when a bullet strikes glass.
And that determines directionality, which is important.
Yes, exactly.
Was the bullet fired from outside the car or inside the car, right?
Right. Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
So important.
Yes. And also sequence. We could tell which one was fired first sometimes in the best case scenarios, So, but sometimes when a bullet strikes glass, it can actually leave markings on it. On the glass that reflect the rifling of the bullet, So you could take a casting, you could take some, like a casting material, like a microsil, and you could make a cast of that, and it might be helpful to a firearms examiner. Maybe if it doesn't tell you exactly which firearm, once again, we can say, okay, left-hand twist and right-hand twist narrow things down, but also the widths of the lands and grooves can also give us more class characteristics. You could take a ricochet mark and you could draw, you could go into a Photoshop program and draw, or through some measurements if you really know how to do it on the crime scene, and you draw that ellipse, you draw that full oval around it, right? So it matches exactly the point of impact, and then right where the widest part is, you're going to measure that. That's going to be your width. And then you measure the length, right? If you don't have, you see how the end of the ricochet mark is kind of confusing. Where does it end, really? It's not as well defined as where it begins. So if you take where it begins and you measure out until you get to the widest point, that would be your halfway mark. Right? So you could, to get the full length, you could measure out to the widest point and then just double this measurement. That'll give you your full length. And then you take the width. Now, if you divide it, and this is what you were talking about before, reminded me of this. I remember in 10th grade, bro, sitting there in my geometry class in 1978 or whatever it was, right? And I'm looking at my teacher and I'm like, dude, there is no way in the world I will need to know all this shit about a triangle. There's no fucking way, man. Who cares? And he's like, yeah, but you got to go, corresponding sides, a congruent triangle, and a SOHCAHTOA. And I'm like, fuck you, man. This is bullshit, But somehow I actually had a knack for it, right? And so what's one of the first jobs I have when I'm working, to support myself, pay rent? Carpentry, right? Yeah. As a carpenter, you got to make things square and plumb and all that. And it's all about trigonometry and geometry. And I was like, wow, I really ended up needing to know this stuff. And then when I get into this stuff, it's the same thing. It's trigonometry is a huge part of that, right? So essentially you can determine your angle of impact.
John,
right?
That's why I became a cop, man. I couldn't do any of this shit. I couldn't do carpentry and I couldn't do geometry. So
right. Good stuff, bro. So if you do some trigonometry on this, you can take the width and divide it by the length, and then you take the arc sine, right? So sine, remember sine, cosine, tangent,
Yeah.
right? So essentially, you're building a triangle within this thing, and I can tell you, an approximate angle at which this struck the surface, which could be helpful. It might point us back to where the shooter was, And then once again, you look for things. I don't like using discharged cartridge cases as a clear indicator of where the shooter was standing, because as you've seen, like, right, what happens? EMS shows up, they drive down the scene, it's like,
Right.
everything's rolling down the street with the bus, and then you have ESU comes through to do a search, and the patrol guys do a search, or people are kicking stuff around. It's not always the clearest indicator. If it lands in grass, a cartridge case lands in grass or sand or something like that, it's a pretty reliable, metric.
Yeah, well, yeah, because it hits and stops.
Yeah, exactly. Right. But the way in a city, when does that happen?
I remember I was at this big crime scene. It's a police shooting in the 2-8, and it was all taped off, and the ESU guy goes under the tape, and Resnick fucking let him have it with a mouthful of expletives. Hey, fucking here! I was like, the guy turned like white. He goes, "What the fuck are you doing in that crime scene?" I was like, wow. The nicest chief you can have to coach out.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that stuff is, clearing the scene. That's an art, right? As a sergeant, you had to.
Resnick had the funniest line, though. I was at it was either at Homicide or CIC. He says, "There's a very specific height that you should put the crime scene tape." He goes, "It should be about 24 to 26 inches off the ground." He goes, "Because there's a lot of fat fucks on this job." He goes, "They can't go under it and they can't go over it." I thought that was funny as hell.
Yeah, that's a classic. He had a good way of putting things, man.
Yeah.
Yeah. That was an art, It was, I used to want to make sure my guys had the room to work, But back when we had film cameras, we'd take the camera with no film in it and put a flash on it and start taking pictures, and everybody would scatter when they saw, or sometimes
Chief, could I get your name and tax number?
Yeah, right. or you have the swab, like a swab. You'd be like, "Hey, boss, thanks for coming by. Listen, anybody who's inside the crime scene, I got to get their DNA." "Oh, I'll see you, Sergeant."
Well, I'll tell you something. John Savino, who was a very thorough first-grade detective from Manhattan Special Victims, he had this really important attempted murder rape case, and there were a bunch of cigarette butts in the ashtray. He tested every single one of them, but he had to do elimination DNA from every detective that responded to the scene. Don't you know that a couple of those butts came back to a detective?
Really?
Violation of crime scene 101, smoking a cigarette and putting it out in the ashtray in the crime scene. I mean, how? I mean, you can't, I mean, it's horrible, right?
Yeah.
It's like using the phone. Well, now probably no one would ever do that because everyone has a cell phone.
Right.
But we had crime scenes where a detective or a cop used the phone. Like, dude, what are you doing? They're going to dump that phone and the call you made is coming back. You're going to be embarrassed as hell, right?
We had a guy in housing. He used to love DOAs. He'd make a sandwich and
man,
sit next to the guy and watch television.
That's unbelievable. Yeah.
When guys used to burn coffee on the stove to get the DOA
smell. Yeah, the smell is sometimes horrendous.
Yeah. Crazy. The August.
No, we're actually at like an hour and a half.
Oh, really? Wow.
So if you want to go a few more minutes, but this is to me, it's been a fascinating presentation. I hope we have some techies out there and some people really interested in forensic science and this very specific topic, because I'm not telling a joke every 10 seconds. So, this is some serious stuff.
I'm trying
it's all for free. It's all forensics for free.
That's right. This is forensics for free.
That's right.
Yep. Yeah, I can go over a couple of things, and we'll wrap it up.
Okay.
Like Bill, when you can make a triangle out of something, you can solve things. This is trying to determine our ricochet angle here. Here's a piece of a slab of concrete. You see here, a bullet strikes this and bounces off and
Uh-huh.
hits this thing called a witness panel, right? So if we level across from here to the witness panel, right? And then
Yeah.
we take that measurement, and then we measure from there up to where the bullet struck. We have two legs of a triangle, and with those two legs of a triangle, I can reconstruct all the angles of the crime scene. We'll do that. We can mess with that another time. This
Okay.
one is really important, though. This is showing you. This is we're using a tracer round, firing a bullet into sand. So what's the twist on this barrel that the bullet's fired?
I got the 50% chance
50,
of
50,
wrong again.
50. Come on, Bill.
Well, it's going to the right, but
All right. He said right. Hey,
so I still got a 50 on this test.
here you go. No, you got that one right.
Oh, all right.
Okay,
75.
so that is 50. All right. So wait, how about this one?
Oh, left.
There you go. All right. So that's 2 out of 3. That's a
Oh my
66.
God. I'm
That's
getting a
passing.
high grade. I'm pulling myself out of the sand here.
Yeah, but I'll tell you, this is a great piece of photography, though, isn't it? You know, you can
Yeah.
see the bullet traveling, and you can see on the tracer. You see how it's like the line going to where it strikes the sand is a straight line, and then it's all squiggly as it leaves. Right? That's because the bullet's tumbling. Right? So it strikes the sand, it's tumbling, whoop, 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 and it goes off to the left. And this one goes off to the right. There's a right hand twist, there's a left hand twist, and that's what I was talking about. So like. At these crime scenes, people see, okay, a ricochet mark here. I'm going to go look at this house over here, because the longer the bullet travels after it deflects is going to be much further from where straight ahead would be, right? So if this is like 2 blocks, I could be at a house over here all the way to the left, saying, okay, I know this was a left-hand twist. Everybody's looking over here straight ahead. But I know enough to look more to the left because I saw a ricochet mark with a left-hand twist. And this one kind of, cements it for you. Here I'm shooting at the hood of this Jeep, right? So here's a shot, ready? Boom. It strikes over here, and the bullet strikes over here. That's our witness panel. Right. So I'm firing from a gun that has what? Here's the impact, and here's where the bullet strikes.
The left-hand twist.
Yeah, boy. Yeah, you got it, bro. See what I mean? You got it. I mean, you're never going to forget this. I'm telling you, you're never going to forget this, and it'll come in handy. So yeah, this is, and you see how much. So here the bullet struck, and see how much higher it is. It hits sheet metal, so the sheet metal bends, and then it launches it. Right? We could go down a little further, where I'm shooting. This is a piece of steel. Right. See, it strikes here, and it didn't have much of an effect as far as deflection. But see how low it is, right? The steel's here, but with the sheet metal, it was up higher and more to the left. So the sheet metal made our ricochet angle steeper than this. And this is what we were talking about, how the bullet will sort of travel almost parallel with the surface, That's what they used to teach in the projects. They said, like don't hug the wall like this because the bullet's going to travel along the wall. I remember that. I was like, get out of here, I watched The Lone Ranger. I know you can ricochet this thing all over the place. So these are just bullets that have ricocheted and they struck my witness panel. You see, this is the profile of a bullet, right? It's not a round hole. This looks like a bullet went sideways through this, right? Because once it hits, it destabilizes and it tumbles, right? So now we know.
Only one thing left to do, Drew. I'm going into wait for your deputy group along.
Oh, Ricochet Rabbit.
Yeah, Ricochet Rabbit.
Mr. Sheriff, I'll be along later.
But we know those guys didn't do their homework because the bigger, slower guy would have ricocheted more than the smaller.
I just love the bing, bing, bing.
Yeah.
Hey, rabbit. I always remember that,
Yeah.
So, John, this was fascinating. I mean, I think we went for an hour and a half talking about this, and we could probably stay here for days longer, go into other forensic topics. But
yeah,
starting out with ballistics, and then getting into ricochets and stuff. You want to plug anything? You got anything you want to talk about? I know you're not forensics for free. You get paid for this stuff.
Yeah. No, nothing really.
Are all the TV stations trying to rope you in to work for free?
for free.
Do
That's
some
all I want.
forensics for free.
Forensics for
I
free.
get called up all the time too, and they're trying to say, "Hey, you know the case? Yeah, you know, hold it before you go any further. How much?
That's right.
Oh, you want money?
Yeah.
Yes, I'm done doing that shit for free. I know this guy, John Paolucci, forensics for free. Give him a call. I go, I don't do that shit for free.
Right.
It's funny how they break it to you. And then they're like, oh, well, do you know any other detectives that work that case? You can go. They don't want to work for free either, you know?
I know. I mean, listen, if it was to help somebody, it's one thing, that's and not only that, but they always twist what you say, and it's always, I had
Look,
one.
all of those, the IG shows, some of them are good, but some of them are like, you look at them, you're like, oh my God, they're so sensationalizing. There's one where this narrator, she goes, and then they went to get them. I'm like, oh my God, where did they get her from,
Yeah. That's the opposite of the guy from Forensic Files. That was my cure for insomnia. Even though it was a very interesting show, the narrator's like, and then they found a knife. And I'm like,
yeah. Or Joe Kenda, who's personally solved 400 murders,
Right. Yeah. I don't think the whole state of Colorado had 400.
Has had 400 murders in its history, going back to the 1800s.
Right.
But he solved all of them.
He did. It's amazing. It's amazing.
So anyway, I guess we'll be closing. Look, we're all two old fucks. We have to wear eyeglasses all the time because we can't see, right?
Right.
Anyway, this is episode number 9 of Real Crime Stories. And instead of talking about a real crime story, we did something different today. We talked about the science of ballistics and ricochets. And I hope that our listeners out there found it interesting. And we couldn't have anyone more qualified to talk about this than retired Sergeant John Paolucci from Forensics for All. And what's the new name of it? I'm sorry.
CSI Experts Inc.
CSI Experts Inc. That sounds original.
Yeah.
I like forensics for free better.
Right.
That gives the wrong impression.
See, well, now the listeners and viewers have tools, right? And remember that old TV commercial? You get to keep the tools.
That's right. Once you learn how to use them, you can actually take them home with you. But before you don't know how to use them, you keep them at school. We don't trust you.
Right. You get to keep the tools.
But then once you learn, you get to keep the tools. You can take them home. You can take your house apart, Anyway, John, thank you so much for coming on the show.
No, it's always a pleasure.
I mean, this is what you did 2 episodes way back when we first started out. And that was more, but we were all over the place talking about different things. But today it's been a real learning experience. And I hope one day you'll come back on again, or we'll be on a TV show together where we both get paid.
Yeah.
Right?
That sounds great.
Where we don't do it for free.
That's right. We'll still do this show for free.
That's right. We do this one for free, but the TV show, you pay us money.
That's right.
Dinero.
That's right.
We get big dinero, right? All right, John. Thank you so much. Everyone, this has been Real Crime Stories, episode number 9, with retired Sergeant John Paolucci. Thanks for listening.
Thanks.